Welcome to Tuesday, June 13th, 2023, your day with a podcast brought to you by Cowboy State Daily. Well, for a lot of Wyoming and a lot of Colorado and some adjacent states, those wet weather conditions continued again yesterday with a lot of rain for some of you, some hail, and heavy downpours as that continued pattern of very moist air continues to go into the Rockies. Yes, that photo on the right is to tell you that we will end this discussion about El Nino, as it's been in the news a lot. But first of all, before we get to the El Nino talk, this very slow moving pattern, it is moving now, but very slowly, is going to keep chances of rain very high through Friday. So we're still looking at a high probability of showers and thunderstorms in many areas along and west and east of the divide, especially east of the divide. Basically, the same areas that have been getting wet will get more wet. If you're in an area where you're not getting a lot of rain, that trend continues as well because things are moving so slowly. But they are beginning to move. Flooding concerns remain. We're going to show you some incredible video of some flash flooding that happened in Albany County on Sunday. And with the ground saturated and slow-moving showers and thunderstorms, flash flooding will remain a big concern. Temperatures are also going to be anything but hot. We are going to continue to be cool, cooler than average in many areas. Now, it's going to get a little bit warmer, but I tell you, it really isn't going to be noticeably warmer till the weekend and into early next week. And shower and thunderstorm activity will decrease. The word there is decrease. It doesn't mean thunderstorm activity ends. There's just not going to be nearly as much of it by this weekend, especially by Sunday and into Monday. But with the ground so wet, you recycle the rain. You recycle that moisture going back into the air to help form afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms when it does finally warm up. But it's through Friday where the consistent, more widespread rain chances will remain. Now, does this mean we're going to go right into a summer-like pattern finally? Actually, no. We've probably got another little hurdle to get through, but we do see a light at the end of the tunnel in this cool, wet pattern. And we will give you kind of a status update of where we are with El Nino. The satellite imagery, again, shows a little bit of a change. See some drier air getting a little bit pushed out into the eastern plains, but you can see the enhancement of the heavier moisture continues in this area right here, where the low pressure system is finally moving, but moving through very slowly. So moist, unstable air remains in place. Now, I want to show you an incredible video. Thank you, Cindy, for sending this in. Now, this is along the Bluegrass River in Albany County. The best way to describe this is north of Laramie, east of Rock River. So what you're seeing is a flash flood that took place from a lot of very, very heavy rain and hail that fell above this particular area, this area as well. But flash flooding is dangerous, and we all know that, but a lot of times you kind of have to see video and understand when you hear flash flood warnings or flash flood watches, why you've got to be extremely careful. This video is pretty incredible to show you what happened here. Yep, that is a horse trailer that you can see going downstream, and you can see how fast the water is moving and how wide the flooding is taking place right there. So this is a good example of a flash flood. I don't want to say good. A lot of damage taking place right here in a very scary situation. This is why you always want to heed those flash flood warnings and advisories, especially if you're in mountainous terrain or you're in a situation to where the potential for flash flooding is going to take place. And you can see the power of that water can take this tractor and move it very far downstream. And there was a tremendous amount of hail coming in with that as well. And we saw this yesterday with those slow-moving, heavy rain-producing thunderstorms. And there are other images and video like this that came out of parts of Colorado over the weekend as well, but not quite as impressive as that one. Now, where we are with the forecast now, the upper level low is moving, but you can see by noon today, it's over northeastern Colorado. So moist, unstable air and cool conditions will persist. So will the chance for showers and thunderstorms. Now, by Thursday, that low moves out. Southwest winds aloft are finally coming in to make it a little bit warmer by the end of the week. But you see this area of low pressure right here. this area of low pressure right here over southern Canada is going to come through and drag a cold front through, mainly during the day Friday. So that's why we have to kind of get past Friday before we start to see the air get a little bit drier from a more westerly flow coming in behind it. So as we go into Sunday morning, by Father's Day morning, that low now is east into the Plain States, and a westerly flow comes right here. This is where Sunday is kind of the day where it will be warmer, the atmosphere dries out a bit, and the amount and the coverage of showers and thunderstorms will drop. Again, I don't want to say it's going to end the chance of showers or storms, but we will see a drying trend and a warming trend. That'll be happening mainly Sunday into Monday and Tuesday of next week. See this low up here over British Columbia? We've got to deal with that. That is likely going to come through towards the middle of next week. So that is going to keep us from going into a more consistent summer-like pattern here for a little bit longer. But things are looking different and moving along here, but it's going to be an exercise in patience for a lot of you who want a more consistent, warmer summer-like pattern to come on in. Yep, here we go again, more rain chances. Now this is through Friday evening. You can continue to see the moisture wants to be right up along the divide where it's been. So the areas that are getting rain will get more. The areas that are drier, like the eastern Dakotas, eastern Nebraska, into the Corn Belt there, will continue to miss out on this rain as the focus continues to be there. But things are going to start to move along and change a little bit. Now look at this 10-day forecast for precipitation. Look at Alberta. Now for those of you concerned about the wildfires, Alberta going to get wet in that low up there. That will help. Also wet in those northeastern areas of Quebec and up into the northeastern provinces of Canada where they need the rain. They're going to get some. So good news there. You can continue to see dryness, not nearly as wet in parts of the Corn Belt there again. But we do see things transitioning and getting a little bit better. Now, El Nino. Last week, there was some word that the Weather Service officially said that we're in El Nino. Basically, that means we crossed the threshold of a temperature anomaly in the subtropical Pacific sea surface temperature ranges that got to the point where we could say it is now into a weak El Nino status. So this is what came out. Now, it's going to strengthen, as we've been talking about, through the rest of summer, into fall, into the next winter season, probably lasting into spring. So we're technically in an El Nino advisory. This is where we were sea surface temperatures a year ago, where La Nina was refusing to go away, and those cold sea surface temperatures really impacted us for almost 3 years. But this is where we are now. The sea surface temperature anomaly has completely flipped. It's done a 180. So the sea surface temperature anomalies are now warmer. So we're now into a El Nino status. But you got to remember, you don't immediately see El Nino things or related things that would happen with El Nino right away. The bigger El Nino factors usually come later as it develops, as it goes on through. But you can see there's been a big change in the heat content. Went from blue in this long range here of La Nina to now where we are right there. Now what we do in the Pacific Ocean is we have El Nino areas, 1 and 2, 3, 4, and 3.4 and 4. Basically, the Pacific is so big, we have to kind of break it up into these 4 sections. But you can see that all 4 sections right here have made that transition to warmer. So when you look out across the Pacific Ocean here, these sections that I just told you go this whole range. And it is important as we go into the development of El Nino, where those warmest sea surface temperature anomalies are. And that's something that we'll talk about later. So you can see the prediction now. Are we going to have an El Nino? We're now above 90%, and there is actually no La Nina potential forecasted in this situation. So it goes without saying we're going to be in El Nino status for a while. And if you go back at the last 3 solar cycles, it's interesting. You do tend to have stronger El Ninos near the peak or just after the peak of your solar activity. And that's kind of where we are right now. Solar activity peaking over the next 12 to 24 months. And voila, you've got an El Nino. Now there's some things to remember because unfortunately this happens all the time. When it gets out into the national media, things just aren't interpreted or conveyed correctly. There's just a lot of things being said out there that aren't necessarily true or not necessarily kind of putting you on the right path. The diminishing La Nina is one reason why we've had this wet spring. it's not because El Nino was here. It actually just technically became an El Nino, but the transition from those colder sea surface temperatures to the warmer conditions that began in late January and February have brought about the changes here in the West, where all of a sudden it has started to rain again, and rained a lot. So that transition phase out of La Nina to an El Nino status. So El Nino has not caused the rain that we've been picking up, but the transition to it has. So this well-established pattern that you hear about in the news does take a while to develop. So when we're technically into an El Nino, it doesn't mean like a switch is being hit. It's something that evolves and develops over time. El Ninos and La Ninas, each one is different. You don't get the exact same result, but you do see trends. But El Ninos are different in terms of their intensity, their longevity. Same goes for La Ninas. So you just can't say that, well, this exactly will happen because El Nino's in place, but you tend to have tendencies or patterns that do repeat themselves, but they're a little bit different every time they happen. But we do see certain patterns that are definitely something that you can count on. It doesn't mean immediate disaster. I've seen several news articles that, oh my gosh, here comes El Nino, imminent disaster. No, that doesn't mean that. You certainly do have some weather phenomenon with El Ninos, like you can have California flooding. Of course, they had that anyway over this past winter. And you can have some other things that go on. El Ninos affect hurricane activity, actually decreases hurricane activity. But it doesn't mean imminent disaster once it's technically become an El Nino. Actually, for the western United States, La Nina is much worse. The negative impacts of La Nina and the droughts La Nina bring and the high winds that La Ninas bring and other things are much more negative than El Ninos for at least this part of the country. So El Nino is definitely going to be impacting us over the next 12 to 18 months, especially over the next 12 months. But the El Nino related impacts really will be coming later, especially as we go into winter and spring over the next year. Have yourself a good Tuesday. We will see you tomorrow.